Hello, kindergartners. It's Miss Acevedo here with YSP, and today we're going to be talking about animal habitats. So, what are we going to be doing today? Well, we're going to learn about different kinds of animals. We're going to learn what they're called, but we're also going to learn about where they live. We're going to be able to identify, that means name the animal, and categorize, that means put it in the place of where it lives. And today we're going to be talking about different habitats. And by the end of this video, what you're going to get a chance to do is you're going to get to make your own habitat models or draw a picture. So let's take a look at animal habitats. And before we jump into that, I want to ask you this very important question, and that is, do you think all animals live in the same location? Hmm, that's an interesting question. I know I've seen fish in the ocean, but I've also seen a dog in my backyard. So, do animals live in the same location? Well, I'm going to show you some different animals and we're going to figure that out. This is a zebra. This is a rhino. We have a lion, an elephant, a sea turtle, a fish, a dolphin, a crab, polar bears, penguins, reindeer, camel, meerkat, and a rattlesnake. Do all these animals live in the same place? I don't know. But looking at their backgrounds here, I see a turtle here and I see a dolphin here, and it looks like they're both in the ocean or in a sea. So I could think that, well, yeah, maybe all animals do live in the same place. But if I do a little bit more noticing, I see here that these polar bears have ice, and these penguins have ice in the background, and this reindeer has ice in the background. So maybe they all live in the same place, but that's not the same place here as the sea. Hmm. So what we're going to do today is we're going to think about, what are these different locations called? And where do animals live? And is it all in the same place? So, what we're going to talk about today, and this is your new keyword, is habitat. A habitat is a place where animals live, right? So I see my penguins here, they're on ice. And I see my fish and my dolphin here, and they're underwater. But I also see these different places here that have trees. So we know that a habitat is where an animal lives, but not all habitats are the same. And habitats are important for animals because they provide animals with everything that they need, such as water, food, and shelter, a place to live. So let's take a look at 4 new habitats today that we're going to learn. So we have an ocean habitat, and we're going to get a chance to look at some pictures, a polar habitat, a desert habitat, and a grassland habitat. And we're going to learn about each one today. Oh,
Polar habitat.
give it 1 second, friends. We're not going to watch those videos, but I'm going to teach you about each habitat. So we're going to start with an ocean habitat. And before I tell you any new information, I want you to look at all the animals that live in this habitat. I see here an animal, and here an animal, and a different animal here, and another one here, and another one here, and right here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 animals that I see that live in an ocean habitat. And an ocean habitat is such a special habitat. An ocean or sea is a habitat, and it is a home for animals that need water, right? Because some animals that need water, they don't live on the land. They need to stay in the water. A sea turtle, right here, fish, a shark, a starfish, a dolphin, and a crab, they all live in an ocean habitat. And sometimes a river or a pond is considered an ocean habitat. So, ocean habitats, and I'm sure you've seen one before, and if you haven't, there's a picture right here in the background. But ocean habitats are so deep and very wide. That means they go all the way to the bottom. That means something's deep. And when something's very, very long from side to side, that means that it's wide. And the ocean can have hot spots and cold spots. So, with all these different things in an ocean, it makes it a great place for plants and animals, right? Because the plants need water and they grow underwater, and the animals need water to survive. So, being in an ocean habitat is the best spot for an ocean animal. These features are perfect for animals, and millions of species live in an ocean habitat. So, we're going to take a look at a second habitat. And that habitat is the polar habitat. I know some of us have not been to the Arctic or the North Pole. I know I haven't because it takes a long time to get there, but I'm going to show you here if you see my compass. We know that there's two spots, only two spots in our entire world that has a polar habitat. The first one is the North Pole, right? Where Santa lives. The North Pole, that's at the top of our world. That's where one polar habitat is. And the second one is down here below in Antarctica, and that is in the South Pole. So those are the two polar areas in the world. And the polar Arctic is near the North Pole, and Antarctica is in the South Pole. And these poles are the coldest and windiest places in the world. And it has ice, mountains, and glaciers. So you can see here that polar habitats have cold temperatures and are covered by snow and ice, which makes them very, very unique. Unique means different. And what we see here is that these penguins are having fun in the snow. And this polar bear family is having a nice sit in the snow. And we have a reindeer here, right? Because reindeers exist in the North Pole. They're all in the snow, right? So in the snow, in a polar habitat, there's very, very little plants. So all three of these animals eat meat to survive. And polar bears, penguins, and reindeers live in a polar habitat to keep cool because they have so much fur on their body, but their fur also helps keep them warm. So that's just a few fun facts about a polar habitat. Let's take a look at habitat number 3. I wonder what it is. Oh, the desert. So a desert habitat is very, very dry. If you live in California, like I do, we have deserts in California. So deserts have extreme temperatures. So that means it could be very, very hot during the day, but also very, very cold at night. Some deserts can be as hot as 122 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. That is very, very hot. And deserts only see a little bit of rainfall a year, and there's very, very few places to get water in the desert. There's no ponds or oceans near the desert. So these features make the desert very, very difficult to live. You'll see very little humans and plants in the desert, and only desert animals live in the desert. So let's take a look at some examples here. Camel, we see this camel, this four-legged friend here. Camels live in the desert, and meerkats live in the desert, and rattlesnakes live in the desert. And sometimes you'll see a bird, like a hawk, flying around in the desert. These animals have special ways to live in the desert so that they can survive because there's not a lot of water, right? And there's not a lot of people and not a lot of plants. So they have to find fun ways to survive in the desert. So, one example is here on my camel. Camels have this little lump on them. It's called a hump, and that's on their back. It's a lump on their back. And why this hump is so important to a camel is because when a camel drinks water, it can drink so much water that the water stays in its hump. So that way, if the camel is traveling through the desert, it can drink some of the water or absorb some of the water from its hump because there's not a lot of water in the desert. So having a hump is such a great thing to a camel because it can save water in its hump. Isn't that interesting? So we're going to take a look at one more habitat, and then I'm going to show you what you're going to do. Okay, so let's take a look. Oh, the grassland habitats. What a green place it is in a grassland habitat. So a grassland habitat, as you can see in the picture, is it has lots of plants and grass. It is the perfect location for animals that need to eat plants to survive. So grasslands can be found between the mountains and the deserts because you need water to be able to grow grass. So grassland habitats, they get more rain than the desert so that the grass can grow, but less rain than a forest because sometimes in forests, or it has less rain and it has less water than a forest because sometimes a forest can have a river or a pond, but you won't find many rivers and ponds in a grassland area. You're only going to see lots of grass and trees. So almost every single continent in America has a grassland habitat. I mean, not in America, my goodness. Every single continent in the world has a grassland habitat for animals to survive. And each grassland habitat grows different types of grass. So before we move on, let's look at the different animals that live in a grassland habitat. I see here an elephant. An elephant lives in a grassland habitat. And a lion lives in a grassland habitat, and lions are very special. They live in a grassland habitat in Africa, and that's what we call the savanna. But the savanna is a type of grassland habitat. And we can also see here a rhino. Rhinos also live in grassland habitats, along with gazelles and giraffes, right? Because giraffes have those long necks to feed on trees and plants. So those are the animals that live in a grassland. So we're going to take a few seconds and then I'm going to show you what you're going to do. Okay, so the first activity that I want you to do is I want you to think about what is your favorite habitat. Is it the ocean habitat? Is it the polar habitat? Is it the desert habitat? Or is it a grassland habitat? And I want you to think in your head which one it is, and I want you to say it in a sentence. My favorite habitat is, right? Because we're going to use that keyword that we learned today. And I'm going to just give you a second to think. If you need to pause this video, go ahead and press that space bar and think, what is your favorite habitat? Okay. I'm ready to share my favorite habitat. And if you need to share it to the screen, you can share it or share it with your family members or your friends. But I'm going to tell you my favorite habitat using my sentence here. My favorite habitat is the desert habitat. I love the desert habitat. I like driving through it. I like seeing all the fun animals, and I love to see the cactus in the desert habitat. So my favorite habitat is the desert habitat. So let's go ahead and now practice. Your next job is to think about what animals live in each habitat. And let's see if you can remember. Habitat, a natural home for plants and animals. Where does this animal live? This is a zebra. Where does a zebra live? An ocean habitat, a polar habitat, a desert habitat, or a grassland habitat? Take a second and think. Where does a zebra live? A zebra lives in a, let's take a look. A zebra lives in a grassland habitat. I wonder if we tricked you on that one. Let's take a look at another animal. Sea turtle. Where does a sea turtle live? And if you need help saying your sentence, you can use it down here. A sea turtle lives in a. Where does a sea turtle live? We're going to give some wait time and some time to think. Are we ready? Okay. A sea turtle lives in a ocean habitat. I think that one was easy because it has the water right here. So I know the ocean habitat has water. Okay, let's try this one now. Polar bear. Where does a polar bear live? A polar bear lives in Are we ready for that answer? Let's take a look. A polar habitat. It's in the name. A polar bear lives in a polar habitat. Nice. So let's go ahead. Oh my goodness, I gave the answer to the next one, but that's okay. We've done a lot of practicing and we know that a meerkat lives in the desert. But what we're going to do next is we're going to learn how to use our vocabulary to make a model of a habitat. So what we did today is we learned that a habitat is a very natural and special place where animals live. And we learned about the ocean habitat and the polar habitat and the desert habitat and the grassland habitat. But what we're going to do now is it's your turn to show your learning about habitats today. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to watch a short video on how to make your own habitat at home. So, making your own model habitat. So, you can create a habitat if you have a box at home. And what you can do is you can use pictures of animals or use animal toys to put animals in each habitat. You'll see in my example here that I've used pictures of habitats, but if I wanted to, I could draw the habitat or I could use real animals too. Not real animals, animal toys. But we know that we need boxes or trays or Tupperware. I use Tupperware here to put my habitat in. And I use materials from my home to make these habitats. So you'll see my polar habitat here has ice, and my grassland habitat has grass, and my desert habitat has dirt because I did not have sand, and I have my ocean habitat here. So we're going to watch a quick video on how I make habitats and how I use them to learn where animals live. Okay, there we go. Hello, scientists. Today we learned so much about the 4 different types of habitat: desert habitat, grassland habitat, polar habitat, and ocean habitat. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to teach you how to make these 4 habitats using materials from your own home. So what you see that I have here is I have 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes. And inside each box, well, this one is actually a Tupperware, but if you have a box, a Tupperware, or even a tray, you can do this as well. But what you will see in my 4 Tupperware is that I put materials that look very similar to the materials I would find in the 4 habitats. So let's look at polar habitat here. I put ice. So I use the type of ice that I put in my lunchbox, but you can also use ice from your freezer. In the ocean habitat, I just have water. See, I could splash around. I have water for my ocean habitat, and you can find that at home too. Now, for desert habitat and grassland habitat, I had to go outside and actually pick some things up, but it was so fun and easy. So, what I did for my grassland habitat, because I know animals eat a lot of grass in the grassland habitat, I went and I collected leaves for my grassland habitat. And for my desert habitat, I did not have sand, but I know there's dirt in the desert, so I made sure that I found dirt from outside and I put it in my Tupperware. So once you have all 4 of your habitats ready to go, now it's the fun part. You get to choose or you get to practice how to put animals in the right habitat. You're going to categorize. That means put in place different animals in each habitat. So what you can see here is I printed out some pictures of animals that might live in the habitat. But what you can do is you can draw pictures, or if you have toy animals, you can put them in that habitat as well. So let's see. I'm going to practice and I'm going to take out a picture here. Oh, a reindeer. So I'm going to figure out, where does this animal go? And I know that a reindeer goes in a polar habitat. Let's try again. Whoa, a rhino. I know a rhino lives in a grassland habitat. And I'm just going to keep going. Penguin. Where does the penguin go? Right here in polar habitat. And I'm just going to quickly go through some more. Here's a dolphin. A dolphin goes in a sea or an ocean habitat. And look at it floating, swimming around. I have a camel. We know that camels have humps to save water because in the desert habitat, there's not a lot of water. And I'm just going to quickly go through the rest that I have. I know a meerkat lives here. Oh no! A meerkat lives in the desert. A crab lives in the ocean. And I dropped some, so I need to pick some up. But I also know that a rattlesnake lives in the desert, and an elephant lives in the grassland habitat. Polar bears live in the polar habitat. It says it in its name. Here's a clownfish like Nemo. We know that that lives in the ocean. And I just have a few more left. Remember, you can draw out these pictures, you can print pictures, or you can use the animals. I know that a lion lives in the grassland habitat along with a zebra, and a sea turtle lives in the ocean. So now we see all our different animals in the habitats, and now you get to practice this at home and show your family how you make your 4 habitat models and what animals live in that habitat. Thank you, scientists, and have such a great time trying this out. Awesome. So now you know how to make these models at home. But if you don't have these materials, you can use Ziplocs, little plastic baggies, to make habitats in the same way. So you can use blue gel or still water for your ocean habitat. You can still use dirt for your desert habitat. You can still use ice for your polar habitat, and you can still use grass for your grass habitat. So instead of being in a box or in a Tupperware, all you need is 4 plastic baggies, and find these materials in your home, and you can make 4 habitats that you can easily carry around. And see here, remember how I said that you can use real toys, animal toys? You can put animal toys in your habitat, and you can think of different animals that I didn't say here, because there's animals everywhere, right? If you think of new animals, you can put them in that habitat, in the right habitat. So, what if you don't have these materials at home to make model habitats? That doesn't mean you can't practice thinking about what a habitat looks like and what animals live in that habitat. You can draw the habitat, and all you need for that is markers and some paper. Okay? So, once you have your paper and once you have your markers, I'm going to give you an example of something you can draw. So, you can cut your paper into 4 sections or use 4 different papers, but you're going to draw an ocean habitat, a grassland habitat, a desert habitat, and a polar habitat. And you're going to draw and label at least one animal that lives there. So we see here our polar habitat. This friend here, he or she drew a polar bear. And in this ocean hat, oh my God, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 animals. They put 6 animals in the ocean habitat. In the desert habitat, they drew 1, 2, 3, 4 animals for the desert habitat. And for the grassland habitat, there's also 4 animals. So you can draw a picture of these habitats and draw the animals that live there. So this is our lesson on habitats today. I hope you had such a fun time learning about the 4 different habitats. And before we go, I want us to keep thinking about animals, and I want us to think about the scientists that study animals. Okay, so we're going to be talking about a really amazing scientist today, and her name is Roger Arliner Young, and she is a zoologist. And a zoologist is a scientist that studies animals. Most of the time they're wildlife animals. So that means they don't study dogs. No, they study animals across the world that live in the wild. Okay, so she is such an important scientist because she is the first African American woman to receive a doctorate degree in zoology, and her research was published. That means she studied animals all the way to get her doctorate degree, and then she wrote up all her findings, and now she shared it with the world. She wrote down a paper, and other people were able to read what she found. She's so important. And she's a zoologist, and what she does is she looks closely at animal behaviors and the environment and the habitat that they live in. And she also thinks about and studies how humans like me and you impact animals, how we affect them, right? And what's so great about Miss Young is that she is most known for studying and protecting sea urchins. So if you've never seen a sea urchin before, I've put a picture of one here. And this is a sea urchin egg. And she wants to protect, or in the past, she used to protect sea urchin eggs so that they weren't harmed and that they could grow on to be larger sea urchins. So Roger Arliner Young is such an amazing scientist, and I wanted to share all her work that she does with animals with you all. So I hope you learned something new today, and I hope you try out those 4 model habitats and you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Okay, well, thank you, scientists, and see you next time.